Hello to all CENIMASTER lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world was on the brink of environmental collapse, and the only hope for humanity to survive lay in the past, 85 million years ago. At that time, greenery had become extremely rare because the earth was no longer suitable for agriculture. When Jim returns home with an orange, his family is overjoyed. Since the air is completely polluted and people are living under harsh conditions, the government implemented a law allowing only 2 children per couple to ensure population control. Since Elizabeth has 3 children, she has to hide her youngest daughter in a secret compartment within the wall to avoid the police discovering her. After the police receive a tip, a group of officers raids the family's apartment and begins searching the place. Zoe, scared by the commotion outside, starts crying softly, which leads the officers to find her. Jim decides to protect his daughter, starting a fight with the officers and overpowering them. However, he gets hit with a stun gun and is arrested. Years later, Elizabeth visits her husband in Golan prison and discovers that he is very ill due to the polluted air in the prison. She went there to inform him that she and the children had found a new land. Jim insists that his family must go there because he knows they will have a chance to start a new life. However, Elizabeth explains that the government will not allow her to take Zoe with her, as according to the law, the girl should not have been born in the first place. Since the visit is secret, Elizabeth only has 5 minutes before the other guards appear. As she's about to leave, she gives Jim an air filter. After she leaves, the prisoner notices a laser gun hidden inside the mask and realizes he can use it to escape. Indeed, after escaping from prison, Jim boards a train and removes the tracking chip implanted in his skin. His next mission is to retrieve a bag full of weapons and money that his wife had hidden in a safe place. Afterward, he heads to the gathering point where Elizabeth and the children are waiting. Before leaving, Josh bids farewell to his fiancée, promising to find a way to bring her to the new land, even if he has to return for her later. After handing over the money bag to an officer who had agreed to help him, Jim takes the bag Zoe had hidden and uses a shortcut to reach the bridge that the pilgrims must cross to reach the gate. When he finally finds his family, he notices that the guards are suspicious of him, so he hands the bag to his wife. When Elizabeth sees her husband being arrested by security, she orders Maddie and Josh to cross the gate, assuring them that she will follow shortly. After ensuring his family has crossed, Jim decides to take action. After attacking the guards, he runs toward the gate. Although they manage to reach the new land, the man and his 5-year-old daughter are considered violators. Since Elizabeth is a renowned doctor, she hopes her family will be forgiven because the settlers will need her expertise in this unfamiliar place. Technology had allowed humanity to create a gate that would take them 85 million years into the past. Therefore, it is impossible to predict exactly what dangers the pilgrims will need to protect themselves from. Upon arriving at the camp, the citizens of 2149 are greeted by Commander Taylor, who delivers a speech stating that this is the beginning of a new civilization. His goal is to help these people avoid repeating the mistakes that destroyed the planet in the 22nd century. When he learns of the violators, the commander summons the couple for a private conversation. As expected, after reading Elizabeth's biography, the man welcomes her to his colony, recognizing how valuable she will be there. After instructing one of the guards to take the doctor to see her children, Taylor ensures that Jim is not a threat and suggests he work in the agriculture department. While his family settles into their new home, Zoe decides to explore the camp and encounters a brachiosaurus eating leaves from a tree. She decides to feed it, and when her family sees her interacting with these animals, they are initially shocked but later realize they are not dangerous and are delighted by these creatures. None of them had ever imagined seeing a dinosaur up close. In the morning, Jim begins his work in the garden, tasked with cutting the weeds along the camp's fences. While using a knife to cut the plants, he notices a giant insect crawling on the fence. Startled, he falls but quickly gets back up and continues his work, knowing he must prove his usefulness if he wants to continue living there with his family. Meanwhile, Elizabeth works in the hospital, treating a patient with a large growth on their back, which she has to remove. On his first day in the camp, Josh befriends Sky, who takes him to her home where she lives with other young people her age. Later, Sky convinces the newcomer to leave the camp and go for a drive in the forest. They stop by a waterfall where they swim for a while. Josh notices equations drawn on a rock, and Sky explains that these markings were made recently but has no idea what they mean. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Elizabeth treats a thief who was captured earlier that morning. Suddenly, the man takes her hostage, and the guard on duty is forced to surrender his weapon to save the doctor. After stealing the gun, Carter barely escapes and is about to cross the gates when Jim sees him. Before his arrest for assaulting the officers who raided his home, Jim had also been a policeman. He immediately realizes something is wrong with the thief's actions. Jim quickly pursues Carter and manages to stop him before Taylor is shot. Grateful for the new man's intervention, the commander realizes he can trust him and decides to reveal what happened in this place years ago. According to Taylor, the criminal who tried to kill him belongs to another camp formed by a group of people who decided to separate from the new land. These rebels are known as the Sixers because they came from the 6th group of pilgrims sent to this place. One night, this group escaped in the middle of the night after stealing a large amount of equipment and weapons. Later, after climbing a mountain and showing Jim a beautiful view of the city, the commander informs him that he will be promoted and become part of the security team. As they look down, they see 2 armored vehicles speeding toward them. Taylor informs his base of the arrival of new rebels. As the rebels make their way to the new land, they are pursued by a hungry Carnotaurus. They attempt to fend it off with their weapons, but during the chase, one of the shooters is devoured by another predator that suddenly appears. As As the animal approaches from the gates, Taylor orders Jin to take the steering wheel because he is going to make himself bait. After stepping out of the car, the man fires shots to attract the Carnotaur's attention. But as he is about to be eaten, Jin goes back to save him. The two manage to reach the camp safely. At that time, the guards prepare themselves for the attack. When the gates close, the predator decides to leave. The next problem the commander and his team need to deal with is the 6th rebels, who manage to infiltrate the base. However, Emily reveals she went there only to rescue Carter. Knowing that Taylor would not easily hand over his prisoners, the woman suggests making a deal and offers a box filled with rare Naisaki metal as payment to retrieve Carter. Knowing how rare this material is and that the 6th rebels control the mines, Taylor agrees to the deal. In addition to Carter, Emily demands medical supplies and ammunition, but the commander refuses to provide weapons to the rebels. After taking the medical supplies, Emily and her team head back home. On their way, they notice a sky vehicle, which its owners use to reach the forest. The rebels stop to steal the vehicle's power cells, but are surprised by the arrival of a killer who easily kills one of their team members. When Taylor reviews the surveillance cameras, he discovers that his young soldiers left the area and stole a vehicle for leisure. Jin, upon learning that his son is in danger in the forest, panics and informs his wife about the situation. Elizabeth decides to help her husband search for their son. By the end of the day, Sky and her companions return to the vehicle to leave, but discover the power cells have been stolen, leaving them unable to restart the vehicle. On the other side of the river, Sky notices a rebel vehicle parked and decides to approach it to retrieve her vehicle's battery. However, she immediately discovers an injured man inside the vehicle. They must unite to avoid being eaten by a predator approaching them. Fortunately, Sky manages to close the armored vehicle's door seconds before the killer reaches them. Now, the next challenge is to escape from there. As the war tank's power begins to fail, Sky realizes that Hendrik is severely injured. She asks Josh for help to stop the bleeding and starts thinking of a way to get her friends out of there safely. As night falls, other killers appear, circling the vehicle. If the group doesn't leave quickly, more dinosaurs will appear to eat them, as this species typically hunts in packs at night. While trapped, Hunter finds a radio inside the vehicle and contacts the commander, who is searching for them in the forest with a rescue team. The boy tries to pinpoint their location. Suddenly, the predators begin their attack, attempting to destroy the vehicle. To delay them, Sky and Josh grab guns and start shooting, but the bullets are insufficient to penetrate the dinosaur's armored skin. Fortunately, the group scares off the creatures with the sound of gunfire, causing them to retreat. However, their radio connection is cut off, and they can no longer communicate with the commander. At this moment, Tasha decides it's time to escape before the creatures return. Her companions are unable to leave the vehicle, so she runs aimlessly through the forest. Suddenly, a killer appears and attacks her. Luckily, Tango finds her, and the rescue team locates her. When Guzman sees his daughter severely injured, he tries to comfort her. Elizabeth administers first aid with Tasha's help. Meanwhile, Taylor tracks down the other young soldiers and follows them. The feral killers return to launch another attack. After tearing off one of the vehicle's doors, a creature grabs Hunter and drags him out by his leg. Immediately, his companions rush out to save him, shooting at the creature. When the dinosaur flees, they help Hunter up and run to the vehicle they used to reach the forest. While Max and Josh reinstall the power cells, Sky takes responsibility for protecting the team. However, she runs out of bullets. At this moment, Max is attacked, and the group is surrounded by the approaching gang, ready to devour them. Before the attack, the commander arrives with his team, using night vision goggles to chase the creatures away. During the rescue, the guards split up to distract the predators, allowing Sky and her companions to board the vehicle. When Jin sees one of the creatures approaching his son, he quickly orders him to shoot, successfully injuring the dinosaur. Once the killers retreat, Taylor and Jin follow Jack to take him to the camp for medical care. Upon inspecting the war tank, they realize the rebel escaped. After the rescue mission, the teams return to the camp, and Elizabeth is relieved to see her son alive. After dinner, Jin and his family step outside to gaze at the sky, rejoicing at the sight of the full moon. In 1249, the air was so polluted that it became impossible to see the sky. Late at night, a group of soldiers transport supplies to Site 3 when they suddenly notice a flat tire. As the men step out to fix the issue, they are surrounded by animals observing them from the treetops and fall victim to an attack. The next morning, Elsa takes the new recruits to the camp to participate in survival training, teaching them what to do if lost in the forest. After reviewing the recruits at the camp, the woman joins the commander on a mission to search for the missing guards who were supposed to return to the new land long ago. In a short time, Jin becomes one of the soldiers Taylor trusts the most, so he recruits him for this mission. When the team finally locates the missing guards, they discover they were brutally killed, their eyes gouged out. In an attempt to identify the animal responsible for the attack, the soldiers decide to bring the bodies back to the camp. Jin asks his wife for help with the analysis. With the assistance of her colleague Malcolm, Elizabeth gathers information to help the guards identify the predators. According to her, the bites and attack style do not match any species recorded in the database, indicating they are dealing with a creature never seen before in the area. At night, while in the room with her husband, Jin hears a frightening sound outside. He steps out to investigate. At that moment, he and Josh see a flock of prehistoric birds and throw stones at them to scare them away. However, they are chased and forced to run and hide. Jin is bitten while trying to fend off the animals. He realizes that they might be the ones who killed the soldiers. Malcolm, after receiving a warning about the presence of these pterosaur birds, suggests sending a research team to the area to observe them and figure out what is causing these attacks in the first place, since these small creatures only attack if they feel threatened. But Taylor doesn't agree agree with his strategy and says that all scientists are prohibited from leaving the compound until they find a reliable way to stop these creatures. A few hours later, while Josh is walking with Sky in the market, he sees the same birds that attacked them the previous night, gathered on the photo netting. But now these creatures are in a much larger flock and begin attacking humans for no apparent reason. Quickly, the two of them hide under a table for shelter, just like everyone else in the area. After a few minutes, the flock leaves, and fortunately, the 36 injured individuals all survive. Malcolm, upon finding the body of one of these creatures, decides to take it to the lab for study and shares his theory about the reason for the attack. According to him, these creatures are migrating, which is why they hadn't been seen in this area before. The bad news is that if his theory is correct, a larger number of these birds will arrive, meaning new attacks are imminent. After conducting a scan of the surroundings using aerial cameras and activating heat sensors, Taylor and his team discover that millions of these birds are hiding under the trees. According to Elisa, 3 years ago, an exploration team found eggshells in this area, but since there were no signs of nearby animal life, they decided it would be a good spot to build the new land. Since the eggshells enriched the soil, the ground there became very fertile, which was one of the reasons Taylor considered this location a good choice for establishing the camp. What no one could have predicted at the time was that this area might be a nesting ground for a species of animals. Upon hearing this, Malcolm concludes that the pterodactyl birds are attacking because they consider humans intruders who have invaded their nest. They are occupying the place where these birds are accustomed to laying their eggs, and he knows new attacks are coming. Taylor then orders Elisa to make an announcement telling civilians to stay in their homes until a way to repel these creatures is discovered. Malcolm and Elizabeth need a pair of these creatures alive so that scientists can study their physiology. Later, Taylor and Jane go out hunting. Taylor manages to collect samples, which are immediately sent to the lab. After some research, Elizabeth and Malcolm discover that they can use the creature's pheromones to lure them to another location. Since this substance regulates their egg-laying instinct, the scientists produce 50 liters of the pheromone to transfer it. This substance will be used to draw the creatures away from the camp. At that exact moment, the camp is invaded by a swarm of dinosaurs trying to break into residents' homes. Despite all doors and windows being locked, the birds manage to break into Elizabeth's house and attack Mark, who is standing guard to protect the youth. In an attempt to escape the attack, Josh orders everyone to run to the medroom, but Zoe is frozen with fear and hides under the table. When Josh sees his younger sister in danger, he rushes to the kitchen to save her. He takes her to the room with the others. After placing the manufactured pheromone inside a barrel, Taylor transports it outside the city, and the creatures, attracted by the scent, follow it. The next morning, all the residents of the new land return to their routine, but Elizabeth is worried about her husband, who hasn't returned from his mission. When she finally sees the car approaching the gates, she relaxes and runs to embrace Jane. When asked about the mission's success, the leader says that the pterodactyl birds are now in the mountains and have chosen that location as their new home. During a field study, a scientist observing insects in this part of the forest leaves his lab to search for one that escaped. When he steps outside, Jonathan sees a Carnotaurus, is amazed by it, and then gets eaten. 3 days later, when Taylor realizes he can't contact the scientist, he decides to check on him, taking Elizabeth along to document the situation as a doctor. When they arrive, the team notices that the place has been breached, and they enter the lab to begin their investigation. While exploring the area, the leader finds a room full of patients suffering from a type of dissociative disorder. Although they appear healthy with normal vital signs, none of them have any idea where they are, having lost all memory of the past years. When Elizabeth watches a recording made by Dr. Jonathan before he was eaten, she discovers that a pathogen is behind this memory loss. She decides to continue his research to ensure her team doesn't encounter the same pathogen and suffer the same symptoms. According to Taylor, the team won't return to the city until Elizabeth figures out what's happening, as the leader doesn't want to risk exposing the entire colony to the disease. The next morning, Jane goes to talk to Elisa to find out why his wife hasn't returned yet. He learns that the Site 1 is under quarantine because the leader reported a potential pathogen the previous night. No one is allowed to go there to avoid the risk of infection. When Jane discovers that Elizabeth might be in danger, he immediately decides to follow her and borrows Malcolm's car. Malcolm insists on accompanying him. When they arrive at the Site 3, the two of them see 2 dinosaurs trying to eat the cables supplying power to the base. The men manage to scare them off and pass through the gate. Knowing the area is contaminated, they use air filters to protect themselves. Suddenly, Jane is attacked by his wife, who doesn't recognize him but remembers Malcolm, as they studied together years ago in medical school. When Jane sees Elizabeth hugging another man after attacking him, he is shocked and tries to understand what's happening. After a brief conversation with his colleague, Malcolm realizes she has lost 20 years of her memory and believes she is still in university. After reading the notes made by his colleague, the scientist discovers she has been exposed to a pathogen causing memory loss. He asks Elizabeth for help in finding a cure. Meanwhile, Jane hears a noise coming from inside the base and decides to investigate to ensure there are no hidden dangers. During his search, he finds the leader, Taylor, the one who storms the hideout and takes the officer as a prisoner because he thinks he's still an infiltrator. After attacking the man who is supposed to be his enemy, Taylor sets off on his way to the new land, with his mission being to rescue his wife quickly, and Jean returns to the labs to report what happened. After that, the team deals with a bigger problem now. If the leader reaches the colony, he could infect all the inhabitants, and since communication with Site 3 has been cut off, Jean can't contact Alyssa to inform her of what happened. So, the scientists must hurry to find the cure before it's too late. At this time, he asks for Malcolm's help to take the man to the hospital because he found him lying at the end of the lab. When they arrive there, the doctor begins to show the first symptoms of memory loss and asks himself why he's dragging this body. Suddenly, a dinosaur appears, and Gene locks himself and Malcolm inside a room to ensure the animal can't reach them. After setting a trap to lure the creature, the officer manages to capture it. Malcolm has to be pushed aside because the man begins to lose his mind. At this moment, Elizabeth appears, and Gene says he had no other choice. Unlike Malcolm, the officer has shown no symptoms since being exposed to the pathogenic substance, which means his body has some immunity to it. After hacking the computers, Gene and Elizabeth discover that one of the scientists working at this base was conducting secret genetic experiments and accidentally released a pathogenic substance into the air that can cause memory loss. Suddenly, Gene starts sneezing and realizes he has a cold. Elizabeth immediately notices that this is why he wasn't affected. The doctor hypothesizes that the substance causing the cold counteracts the other substance causing memory loss. From here, she figures out how to create an antidote. In the morning, when they arrive at the new land, Elizabeth discovers that the leader was captured while trying to infiltrate the camp. She uses the substance she developed overnight to help him regain his memories. And that's a summary of the first 3 episodes of the series Terra Nova 2011. See you in a new